Forget that famous scene in your mind. The well-behaved, smart Isaac Newton sitting under a tree with an apple falling on his head. Because the story you were told in school is one of the greatest cover-ups in history. Yes, Newton discovered gravity. Yes, he solved the mathematics of the universe. But he wasn't doing this to create modern science. He was actually pursuing a very different, much darker obsession. Isaac Newton was not the first scientist in history. He was the last magician. This claim may sound crazy, but to face the truth, we need to turn the calendar back to 1936, to the famous Sotheby's auction house in London. That day, an old chest, left behind by Newton's family and neglected in dusty attics for centuries as having no scientific value, was put up for sale. The scientific world was excited. Everyone expected new physics laws and unseen mathematical equations to come out of that chest. There was no physics in the chest, no mathematics. Instead, there were pages of manuscripts, strange symbols, winged dragon drawings, recipes for the green lion, and oven temperatures. The smartest man in the world had secretly spent 30 years in his laboratory, boiling mercury and practicing alchemy. Physics laws were just a side hobby. His real goal was to decode God's secret cipher and find the philosopher's stone. On that day, Keynes admitted the truth with his famous quote, "Newton was not the first man of reason. He was the last of the magicians." But why? Why would a man who discovered the greatest secret of the universe, gravity, spend his time with magic and boiling cauldrons? For Newton, science and alchemy were not separate things like we consider them today. He was deeply religious, even obsessively so. To him, the universe was a book written by God, full of codes. Physics was just the cover. Alchemy was the contents. Newton had discovered gravity, but he had a big problem. He did not know what gravity was. What was that invisible rope connecting the planets? How did the sun hold the earth? Newton believed the answer lay not in physics, but in alchemy. He thought that matter contained a divine active spirit, vegetative spirit. He wanted to distill that spirit, capture that divine essence in his laboratory. He split his life in two. During the day, he wore his robe at the university, wearing the serious mask of the Royal Society's president. At night, he removed that mask, locked himself in the shed at the back of his house, stoked the fires of his furnaces, and inhaled poisonous mercury vapors, searching for the philosopher's stone. He even went so far as to study the dimensions of Solomon's temple, looking for chemical formulas hidden in ancient mythological stories. To him, every god in Greek mythology represented an element. But he was not alone in this pursuit. More importantly, it was a secret pursuit. For centuries, alchemists had to work underground, like a secret society. Why? Two reasons. First, the church. Attempting to change matter meant interfering with the work of the Creator. If God created lead as lead, you could not turn it into gold. It was a sin. punishable by the Inquisition. Second, theft. An alchemist would not want to risk losing a formula they had spent 40 years developing to a rival. So they developed a complex, coded language and symbolism, like a bird language. If you open an alchemy book today, you probably won't understand anything. It might say, "Take the green lion, marry it with the red king, then sweat them in a bath, and feed the newborn to the crow." A regular reader would call this nonsense and close the book. That was the point, to protect knowledge from the ignorant. But for a master, this sentence was a clear laboratory instruction. The green lion was a raw metal ore reacting with acid, usually iron sulfate. When acid touched it, it turned green. The red king was sulfur or mercury. Marrying meant melting them in a crucible. The crow was the black ash produced after burning. Newton had read more alchemy books than the Bible to decode this language. Most of the 1,000,000 words found in the chest were notes on breaking these ciphers. The biggest superstar of this coded world was undoubtedly NICOLAS Flamel. Yes, the same name from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. J.K. Rowling did not make him up. Flamel was a real man living in 14th century Paris, a humble manuscript seller. But legend has it that one night an angel appeared to him in a dream, showing an ancient book covered with strange symbols. A few days later, a stranger came to his shop and sold him the exact book from his dream. The Book of Abraham the Jew. The pages were not paper but thin copper plates. Instead of letters, there were incomprehensible images. Flamel spent 21 years trying to decode the symbols. Not only that, he traveled from Paris to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, risking his life to find a sage who could help unlock the book's secret. In the end, he succeeded. In 1382 at noon, he claimed he had turned mercury into silver, then into pure gold. Legend? Perhaps. But historical fact, Flamel went from a poor seller to immense wealth, funding 14 hospitals, 3 churches, and 7 chapels in Paris, giving money to the poor. People whispered, "This man has found the stone, immortality." When he died, his tomb was said to be empty. Flamel's story, like Newton's, fueled centuries of obsession with genius. So what exactly were Newton and Flamel doing in the lab? What was happening in that cauldron? Alchemy was not random boiling. It followed strict rules, a 3-stage color journey. First stage, NIGREDO, blackening. Everything begins with death. The alchemist burned the metal, decomposed it, turning it into pitch-black ash. This was the death of matter, because according to alchemy, nothing could be reborn without dying. Destroying the old form was necessary. It also symbolized killing the alchemist's ego. Second stage, ALBEDO, whitening. The black ash was washed and distilled with special liquids. The material turned white. Purity. Cleansing the soul and matter. The color of silver. Final stage, RUBEDO, reddening. The grand finale. The purified material was given fire and spirit. If the heat was right, if the stars aligned, and if the alchemist's heart was pure, the mixture turned bright, deep red. This red powder was the legendary Philosopher's Stone. Placed in molten lead, it would turn into gold. Mixed with water, it could rejuvenate cells and extend life. The goal was to reach this red. Yet many alchemists met their end trying to reach this red. Alchemy was a dangerous pursuit. In 1693, Newton entered the darkest period of his life. He began sending strange, paranoid, nonsensical letters to close friends John Locke and Samuel Pepys. "You are setting traps for me," he wrote. "Trying to tempt me with women and sin," he claimed. He suffered from insomnia, trembling hands, and memory loss. Modern medicine today can clearly diagnose this: acute mercury poisoning. Newton had used so much mercury in his experiments that he even tasted it, thinking it was the spirit of metals. Hair analyses show 40 times the normal mercury level. The great mind that discovered gravity almost destroyed itself through alchemy. Then, the mysterious fire. One morning, Newton's laboratory caught fire. Legend says his dog, Diamond, knocked over a candle. But conspiracy theorists argue Newton had discovered the truth, but knew it was too dangerous for humanity, and deliberately burned his work. Which version is correct? We don't know. But what we do know is that after that fire, Newton abandoned alchemy and devoted himself to state affairs and the mint. He put down the magician's staff and picked up the clerk's pen. The result? Newton, FLAMEL, and thousands like them. Did they find the Philosopher's Stone? According to history books, no. Could they talk to metals? No. At first glance, it seems like a long history of failure and madness. But the greatest, sweetest irony of alchemy is this: they didn't find what they were looking for, but they discovered things far stranger. In their pursuit of gold, they boiled everything, every disgusting thing imaginable. In the next episode, we'll go to alchemy's darkest, funniest, and most smelly experiment. A man searching for the Philosopher's Stone not in metal or stone, but in the human body, even in his own urine. And brace yourself. The man found what he was looking for. Not gold, but a cold fire glowing in the dark. See how alchemy accidentally gave birth to modern chemistry, discovering phosphorus, gunpowder, and porcelain. In the next video.